Hey friends! My name is Desiree, aka Mama Friendly, and I do all sorts of videos on my channel, from cooking videos to planner videos, vlogs, hauls, homeschool videos with a Disney twist, a little bit of everything. So if any of that sounds like fun to you, I hope that you'll subscribe and join me on my YouTube adventure. Today's video is a collaboration hosted by Tamara of Southern Wife Everyday Life. We're doing our monthly cookbook collab where we're challenging our viewers to break out their cookbooks at home because there are so many gems of recipes in these books and they're just sitting there collecting dust. So rather than Googling your recipe for dinner tonight, come on over to the playlist, which is linked in the description box below, and get some inspiration to maybe go to the library, check out a bookstore, and bring some of these cookbooks home for yourself. Something else that I do on my channel every month is try to bring you guys a brand new Cuban recipe because I decided that this year I wanted to dive more into my Cuban culture and heritage, and along the way teach myself to make some of these recipes that, to be honest, I relied on my grandmothers and my mom to cook them for me whenever I wanted them. But it's up to me now to keep the traditions alive, and so I have this very special cookbook here with me today. This one is called Memories of a Cuban Kitchen, and it is in fact written by Cubans. And it's got all sorts of recipes in here. It says over 200 classic recipes. What I really like is that in between recipes, they also give you a little bit of backstory as to why one specific part of the island might cook a dish this way, whereas the other part of the island cooks it that way. Stories of how these dishes came to be Cuban dishes, like how we adapted them and so on. So it's almost a history lesson as much as it is a cookbook. And I can't think of a better way to get in touch with my culture. So I selected a recipe from here that is naturally gluten and dairy free because, again, if you're new to the channel, welcome. But you might not know that I have food allergies, and so something that I've been doing with my Cuban recipes, with every recipe on my channel this year, is finding ways to adapt them to make them gluten and dairy free so that they are obviously safe for me to eat, but also so that they're more accessible to anybody else that might want to try them that also has food allergies or is otherwise on some sort of dietary restriction. And the recipe that I chose is Moros, or Moros y Cristianos. Some parts of the island calls it congri, although in other parts of the island, congri is a completely different thing. But there's a very interesting history lesson as far as why this dish is called Moros y Cristianos. So basically, Spain borders Africa, Morocco specifically, and there's a lot of intertwining of those cultures because of their geographical proximity. So Moros literally translates to Moors, or people of Morocco, and Cristianos, you can imagine. So in this dish, we're kind of celebrating the intermingling of these two peoples. As I've come to learn, it's an extremely easy dish to make, and you'll not only find this at every single family gathering and holiday, but honestly, you'll probably find it at most Cuban dinner tables because it's that much of a staple. I'm gonna have this cookbook linked in the description box below. While you're there, make sure you check out the playlist, like I said, so you could see what everybody else made for their cookbook collabs this month, and check out Tamara's channel as well. So let me go ahead and show you how the cookbook tells you to make the moros and a little bit of changes I made throughout the process. All right, friends, so I'm gonna show you just one of the many versions of making moros, or moros and cristianos. And funny enough, my family calls this congri, but congri, depending on where you are in Cuba, is a completely different dish. Well, not completely different. It uses red or kidney beans instead of black beans. But where we're from in Cuba, congri, moros, it's all the same thing. So I'm going to show you how to make traditional moros right now. And this goes with everything. It goes with chicken, it goes with pork, it goes with everything. If you make it with bacon, it could be a standalone dish, or you could even mix some chicharrón into it and it's really good. So, like I said, every family has their way of doing it. Every part of Cuba has their way of doing it. I'm just showing you one of many versions. We're going to start with either 4 ounces of bacon that you're going to cut into a dice, and we're going to saute it to use its oil basically, or you can just go straight to the source and use some olive oil. You're gonna need 5 tablespoons just for the saute portion. You're gonna need an extra 2 tablespoons later on. Speaking of saute, for our sofrito, we're gonna need a medium-sized onion, and we're gonna chop this as finely as we can. You guys know my knife skills are garbage, but I'm gonna try my best. I've also got a green bell pepper here that I'm also going to de-seed and chop up finely, and about it says 2 cloves of garlic finely chopped. I'm thinking more like 2 tablespoons. I never take a cookbook's suggestion for garlic seriously. I always put far too much, quote unquote, but it's about right for me. Then we need either 1 cup of black beans that you're going to soak overnight and prepare according to the package directions because you want them cooked. Or the easier and less time consuming route is to just get 2 16-ounce cans of black beans. You're not going to drain them. The recipe calls for 2 cups of raw converted white rice. I have jasmine rice. I'm hoping it's the same thing. It's still white rice. 4.5 cups of water. Then we're gonna need 2 teaspoons of salt, some freshly ground black pepper to taste, those 2 extra tablespoons of olive oil as I mentioned earlier, and then we need 1/4 teaspoon of ground cumin, and we need 1 bay leaf, which you're going to remove before serving. Once you have all your ingredients, this recipe is very simple. It comes together very quickly. So in a large saucepan, if you're using bacon, you're gonna dice it up and cook it 6 to 8 minutes over low heat so that it releases its grease and it starts to get fragrant. Otherwise, you're just gonna put in your 5 tablespoons of olive oil. Once that comes to temperature, you're gonna add in your onion, bell pepper, and garlic. Remember, these are all finely chopped. And we're gonna cook them, stirring them until they're tender, about 6 to 8 minutes as well. Then we're gonna add in our remaining ingredients, so that's our 2 cans of black beans. In goes our 2 cups of raw white rice, our 4.5 cups of water, 2 teaspoons of salt, your bay leaf, your 2 tablespoons of olive oil, 1/4 teaspoon of ground cumin, and some black pepper to taste. We're going to stir this all together and cook it over medium-high heat until all the water's been absorbed and small craters start to form over the surface of the rice. This should take about 10 to 15 minutes. Now we're going to stir everything up with a fork and cover it. We're going to cook this over low heat until the rice is tender, so another 10 to 15 minutes. Then we're ready to discard the bay leaf and serve. I really like topping this with a little bit of garlic salt, another little drizzle of olive oil, and in my opinion, in my family's opinion, some lemon or lime juice over the top always makes any Cuban dish sing. So there you have it, friends. That's how the cookbook wants you to make these Moros y Cristianos. Now, I did make a little bit of adjustments. I, as you saw, served them with some olive oil. I put some garlic salt on top, lots and lots of limon, because that's how my family's always eaten everything, really. But I want to say that the seasoning in the cookbook, in my opinion, leaves a lot to be desired. I understand that typically with a cookbook, they tend to err more on the bland side because some people prefer their food that way, and you can always doctor it up to fit your tastes. But I feel like because it's a Cuban recipe specifically, I would have loved to have seen seasonings and spices more reflective of the culture. And I felt that that was lacking in this recipe anyways. So I use this all the time. This is from Trader Joe's, which is obviously not the most authentic Cuban, establishment, but the mix of stuff in this is incredible, and it really does add a Cuban flair to anything. So if you can't find this, if you don't have a Trader Joe's near you, or if Trader Joe's decides to pull this at any point, because they like to do that, this actually just contains garlic, onion, salt, lots of lime, red pepper, bay leaf, coriander, cumin, black pepper, bitter orange or naranja agria, oregano, cilantro, and basil. Basil's not used a whole lot in Cuban cooking, but I guess they had to throw that in there just to, like, I don't know, keep us guessing. But all of the other herbs and spices I mentioned are staples of Cuban cooking. And so even if you can't get this, I personally would add a little bit of everything to this dish to really make it like a Cuban dish, a Cuban flavor. Otherwise, the procedure was good. I feel like if I had used the rice that it called for, which was the parboiled rice, I would have gotten a texture more like the traditional dish, but I liked this way just fine. The traditional way comes up a little more dry, but I thought that this was super, super tasty, and I will be making it this way again, just, you know, like I said, with a lot more spices. Sometimes cookbooks serve as inspiration, you know, and they're a good jumping off point, but you gotta go and let it develop into something that is your own. And of course, everybody's family makes this a little bit different, and I'm sure that every time I make it, I'm gonna make it a little bit different, but that's the joy of cooking. I want to thank you so much for being here and watching this video. I really hope that you enjoyed it, and if you did, I hope that you will please give it a big thumbs up. I'd also love it if you would subscribe and click that notification bell, because I post at least 3 times a week and I wouldn't want you to miss a minute. Thanks so much again for watching. Hasta la próxima!